welcome back to the World CX Summit Asia. And right now we're on our CX panel discussion, Exceeding New Expectations in the New World of Digital Innovation, Research, and Changing Customer Behavior and Experiences. Well, great culture leads to employee happiness the same way a toxic culture leads to unhappiness. Happy employees means higher engagement, profitability, and low turnover. Well, this session will allow you to examine the deeper roots of research and find out how to harness delivering exceptional customer experiences and grow your business locally and globally. Well, this panel discussion will cover how do we champion digital inclusion to reach a variety of customer segments in a post-COVID-19 world. Where can human touchpoints add value to digital journey, embracing AI in multi-channel retail, preparing to serve the customer of 2030, where to invest in 2021, key lessons and wider CX implications for the future, and also the improvement of delivery of your services to connect with your audience in moments of need. Well, we're elated to be joined by our eminent panelists. First up, Millie Gillon, the Global Head of Clients Experience, MD Standard Chartered Singapore. Well, Millie has a wealth of knowledge about innovation and strategy and combines this with the use of data and design thinking to reshape the client experience and innovation. Thank you so much, Millie, for joining us and giving us your valuable time.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we also have Harish Agarwal, who's the Head of CX Solution Strategy, Qualtrics Singapore. Well, Harish, heading the Customer Experience Solution Strategy for SE at Qualtrics. He's somebody who's the marketing and CX leader, APAC, having lived and worked in India, Hong Kong, Indonesia, and Singapore. Thank you so much, Harish, for joining us and giving us your valuable time today.
Thanks, Bhavna.
Well, we also are joined by Truc, the Head of Customer Experience Central Group, Thailand. Well, Truc is the leading customer experience to transform the customer journey map across physical and digital channels to create seamless and personalized customer experience. Thank you so much, Truc, for your time today.
Thanks for having me today.
Also, we're joined by Martin Meany, the SEO Customer Experience and SEM Performance Specialist, 3 Ireland. Well, Martin is also a freelancer SEO consultant and the founder of technology review site, currently working in the 3 UK, which is a British telecommunications and internet service provider based in England. It is a subsidiary of CK Dutchinson Holdings operating under the Global 3 brand. Thank you so much, Martin, for giving us your valuable time and joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
And ladies and gentlemen, the entire panel discussion is going to be moderated by Andy Schoen, the Regional Director, VP, Technology Innovation, Prudential Corporation, Insurance Asia, Computer Society, Hong Kong. Well, Andy, a leading AI pioneer and global visionary with over 3 decades of innovation experience in a range of industries, including insurance, finance, health, transportation, education, and government. Thank you so much, Andy, for joining us today and giving us your valuable time.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Pleasure. So ladies and gentlemen, with this, we present to you our eminent panel. We request all our delegates, if you do have any questions, to please type it in the Q&A tab so that if time allows, we'll pass it on to the moderator to take it forth with this panel. Over to you, Andy, and thank you once again for joining us.
Thank you for the introduction, Bhavana. And welcome to our panel discussion on exceeding new expectations in the new world of digital innovation, research, and changing customer behavior and experiences. We have an amazing lineup of elite panel members who are experts in customer experience to share their experiences with us. Now, before we invite our panel members to speak, let me provide a backdrop for our discussion. Our topic is how to exceed customer expectation in the new world of digital. And this is particularly important with the new norm. People say that COVID-19 has permanently changed consumer behavior, even after restrictions are lifted. And over the past year, companies realized very quickly the importance of being digital and digital transformation. Many companies that cannot catch up have unfortunately, gone out of business. Some say that COVID-19 has accelerated digital transformation by as much as 5 to 7 or even 10 years. At Prudential, where I work, our agent to customer interactions have also changed. It is all virtual now with digital leads, virtual meetings, e-documents, e-signatures, and e-payment. It is quite a radically different world from literally just a year ago. So it's amazing changes happening in all the industries. Digital consumer behavior and customer experience definitely much more important than ever before. Customer expectations have also evolved and changed. It is interesting to learn from our panel how their companies have been coping and innovating, especially in the area of consumer experience and exceeding customer expectations and what words of advice they might have. Now, Bhavana has already introduced each panel member, but may I invite each to supplement with a brief intro to their current customer experience priorities and challenges they are facing. So let's start with Millie from Standard Charter.
Hi,
Millie?
Thank you so much again for having me. So some of the current things that we're working on is definitely a lot of automation, a lot of digitization of our processes because we have no other choice, just like everyone else. But one thing that we have started to incorporate are some signature actions, some things to help our clients across the globe, wherever they may be, and especially various parts of the region. Some are in lockdown, some are not. So what we've started to incorporate are a lot of benefits from health and wellness perspective. For example, we've partnered with a health and wellness organization that provides fitness classes online, globally, and sometimes even in local languages. So that's just one area that we started to grow on. But I am actually really excited to share about how have we started to pivot and evolve the way that we gather client insights and how are we going to use them to design more human-centered types of experiences. So more to come.
Thank you, Millie. Next, how about Harish? Can you introduce a bit of your priorities currently?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Andy. So I work with Qualtrics, and Qualtrics is actually one of the biggest experience management companies in the world. And we help our clients manage their customer, employee, brand, and product experiences. So I work with enterprise clients on setting up and maximizing business impact from their CX programs or voice of customer programs. And I'm seeing more organizations today take or make customer experience a focal point of their growth strategy. And this is particularly after the global pandemic. But I do see that there is a huge difference, or there's a huge variety in terms of the maturity of CX expertise in organizations, and we deal with organizations on both sides of the spectrum. So to me, it's really helping the organizations understand how can they drive value from programs like these. And I'm very excited to be part of this panel. Hopefully, I will be able to share my learnings and also learn from the wonderful panelists. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, may I invite Truc to say a bit about what you're working on now?
Hi everyone. So I'm leading the customer experience of Truc. It's a retail industry in Thailand, and as you also know, that retail is one of the industry that heavily impacted by the pandemic. So we transformed significantly during the COVID-19. They say that in the past 3 or 4 months after the pandemic, it's equal to 10 years adoption of technology for the industry of the retail, right? And I'm very lucky to join the retail at the moment when it's very interesting and challenging at the same time to create the omni-channel experience to connect the offline with online and inspire the online to shop offline as well in order to meet the customer need. So I'll be sharing some of the learning and also example that our company did in order to meet the customer expectation during the crisis time.
Thank you. Yes, the O2O is getting more important now. A lot of restrictions are lifted. People can start going out. Martin, you want to say a few words about what your priorities are now?
Sure, yeah. So yeah, like most businesses, I guess our priority right now is kind of adapting to online being such a primary channel. Like for telecoms retail, one of our priorities or one of our biggest strengths has always been our customer sales assistants in store, being able to kind of get complex products across to customers quite clearly. I don't say that just because I used to be a sales assistant in store many years ago. But it's definitely that old experience stands to me now as I kind of work in online formally in store. But yeah, like the big challenge we have now is obviously our footfall to stores is down. We've got customers going online, whereas they used to just research online. Now we're trying to make a purchase flow for them that's much more attractive. So we're trying to translate all those offline experiences into online experiences, whether it be through virtual interactions with store staff. So in lockdown, we're still allowed to keep our stores open as an emergency resource. But we don't have as much footfall. So we have lots of staff in store. So we've introduced systems that customers can speak directly to staff members in store and get that advice. But we're also introducing bots and scalable solutions that can also help customer journeys as well. So that's pretty much what we're looking at right now.
Well, thank you so much. A lot of exciting stuff. Definitely a lot of changes over the past year, and we'll probably see a lot more. To start, maybe I'll ask a very broad question and see if we could get some insights from our panel members. How can we better, so there's a few things we need that I'll be interested in learning. So for first is, how can we be better at listening to customers to design and deliver a superior digital experience and to meet customer needs? And because, as you know, customer needs have changed dramatically over the past year. And not only to meet their needs, but also to exceed their expectation, because with more and more people going digital and online, in fact, like Martin said, most of the retail is now online. Expectations in terms of performance, in terms of responsiveness, in terms of quality of service, have all been raised to a new level. So how do you address these issues? That would be very interesting for me, I think, and for the audience as well. Let's start with Harish.
Sure.
How have you been?
I'll give you a perspective on what organizations I think should be doing. Right. So as you mentioned, this last 1 year has really accelerated the adoption of digital, and it has made customer experience a real centerpiece in terms of where organizations are beginning to focus on, because they see that product is being copied easily. Most experiences are moving to digital, so delivering better experience is now focal point for them, right? But when I talk to so many organizations, as now that I'm in a consulting role, a lot of organizations are still very focused on measuring customer satisfaction or NPS, right? So it's more about measurement and using that measurement and improving that rather than using listening to customers central to the way that they are developing products or services or designing experiences. And I think that's where they ought to focus, right? Not just on measurement, but how are you using customer feedback to, one, design great experiences, and second, improve the experiences that you're already delivering. And how do you get closer to customers? How do you get that feedback, analyze this big data, right, and use AI and ML in the right way to get hidden insights, and then use that insights to drive change within the organization? I think that, to me, should be the focal point for organizations if they really want to win in this new world.
Thank you, Harish. Definitely very important point, because with so many things being digital these days, there's a lot of data being collected, and data is just numbers. The most important thing is, like Harish mentioned, is what does those data tell us? How are we doing? Are we giving customers what they expect? How do we improve upon what we're doing? And with data, obviously, with so many data points and constant data stream, you must, organization must use AI and machine learning to gain insights to the performance. So that's very important. Truc, how have your company been listening to customers digitally and coping with expectations?
I totally agree with the point that message and data are two different perspectives. The more data you have doesn't mean that you understand what the customer wants, right? So it's important what kind of data to collect to make it meaningful. However, I also want to touch point in the customer service listening as a human beings as well. So it's not always when the customer is saying that yes or no in the survey, or when you pop up notification to ask and then you use it for learning machine or AI. It's also important that the customer feel that they are listened by a person and then express their concern and contribution to the brands or the product. And not only the customer should feel that they are being listened, but also the employee should feel that they are being listened, so that they can be confident, they can be empowered to convey the message from the customer for us to improve or develop the products.
Very, very important point. And that would lead to another question eventually that I'll be interested in learning is the human touch. I think what you touch upon is, data and AI sometimes could be very, well, how does put it, very robotic, I guess, maybe. So how do we put that human touch back into the interaction with our customer? That's very important. Martin, any insights on how we handle customer expectation?
Yeah, well, I think like one thing that we've definitely noticed is that we're in an era of getting a lot more yeses than we used to get. I'm not actually talking about customers. I'm talking about management, effectively, or like the higher powers of a company. So things that we were trying 2-3 years ago, that were basically being rejected as really good ideas for our customers. We're being rejected, but now we're actually going back with those same ideas, and our digital team is much more empowered to say, yes, go do that. Let's see if it works. So like what a good idea was 3 years ago doesn't necessarily mean it's not still a good idea. So we're actually dipping back into some of our old ideas and getting yeses for them and implementing them. And they're getting implemented so quickly. And what they're actually giving us is new touch points with our customers. And like what Harish was saying there, we're getting lots of new data. And I think that probably the challenge we're facing now is that we've spent 12 months of like rapid prototyping and rapid introduction, that now we need to kind of stop and see what's actually working and actually start diving into that data. So I absolutely agree with that the big point for us as a company right now is we need to start looking at these new data sets that we've created. But also in terms of connecting to our customers, we need to start looking more at what our USP is, because like you said earlier, every company is going online. Every company is quickly getting all these products online to their customers. So how can you make a unique connection with that customer, and how can you open a two-way dialogue with them?
Thank you, Martin. Yes, definitely. One of the big challenges, how do we treat each customer as a unique individual with unique needs and different stages in life? And all we see in the back end is just data points. How do we get some more information from those data to understand the human aspect of our customers? And then, and then with what Martin mentioned about lots of yeses, I think that's one of the reasons why digital transformation have been accelerated in such a great pace. Getting budget and approval have been a struggle before, but now it's a top priority, because without digital transformation and not being digital, the companies just don't survive. Millie, what's your perspective on this?
So I recognize that NPS is really important, and it's something that we can't live without, because it's across industries, across companies, very well established. But at the same time, I know we can go on and on for hours and hours about our complaints on NPS. So what we are doing is trying to start to pivot away from being reactive to being proactive through our data and really listening to our clients. And just to be clear, my definition of clients is our employees first, and then our external clients, as well as our partners, because I really do think that partners is the future. It's going to be really about us integrating into ecosystems and platforms. So what we've started to design is this concept of 5 V's, 5 voices. The first voice, of course, voice of the customer, voice of the employee, voice of the partner, voice of the benchmark, and voice of the future. Now, voice of the customer, you might think, okay, that would be NPS, that might be complaints, but actually what we're trying to do is really dig deep into the psychographics of our clients, both our current target clients as well as our future target clients. Future as in, we know that they will fit our profile in the near future. We don't offer the right solutions or the right processes or services to meet their needs. So understanding that and starting to build for that is extremely important. Now, from there, what we end up doing is also really understanding why do they make those decisions? What have they gone through in their experiences in order to derive what are their expectations? Now, in addition to that, we also focus on the employee experience and really understanding what are some of the pain points, what are some of their needs, so that we can try and solve for that. In addition to that, the partners, they will be our future in terms of partnerships, ecosystems, platforms, and really understanding, would people recommend us as partners? How easy or how difficult is it to partner with us, whether it's to onboard or to build out the capabilities that we signed up for? And then voice of the benchmark. So essentially, what is best in class from an experience perspective across industries, and then what is worst in class? So that's free lessons. We don't even have to experiment and waste our time or our money there. That is probably most important. And then, of course, future trends. So there are all of these signals going on around us. And once you capture what are these signals saying and what are the ones that you should be listening to, these lead to trends. And the trends help us to paint, this is what the world will look like in 20 years. And of course, it's going to change. It's going to shift because things like a pandemic or a bubble bust can happen. And of course, we can pivot. But in general, it tells you what are the directions or what direction you should be aiming for instead of shooting in the dark in every single direction. So what we do is we take all of that into account and then create what is our vision, what is our future state, what should we be designing for, and trying to help to anticipate those client needs, anticipate what the client wants are and what their goals are. Because at the end of the day, data and surveys and even focus groups, that will probably tell you at most 50% of what a client wants. Client doesn't really know 100% of what they want.
So true. Thank you for that, Millie. That's very interesting. Hearing these different different voices, as you call them, basically, stakeholders, employees, customers, partners, and then benchmarking yourself against industry, and then have a vision towards the future to drive your priority. That's wonderful advice. Moving on to that, an interesting question is, because different industries and different organizations have different culture. So we'd like to know how much of a role does organizational culture plays when it comes to making CX a focal point to drive business impact. I know, Harish, you are very interested in this topic. Maybe I'll start with you to share some of your insights.
Sure, you're right. This is a topic which is very close to my heart because I've seen so many customer experiences program fail or not have the right impact, not because they didn't have the right technology behind them, but frankly, the organizational culture wasn't something which was focused on customer centricity. To me, when it comes to a customer experience program and making it successful, there are three things that are very important: culture, competency, and technology. And culture to me is probably the single most important component of this framework, right? And when it comes to culture, see, there are a number of things that you can do or you should do in an organization when you are trying to develop the right culture which supports CX and customer centricity. But there are two imperatives which you must do. One, there must be leadership commitment on making CX a focal point within an organization. You cannot have an organization successfully putting customers at the heart and center. The leadership does not believe in that, right? And second, you got to activate middle management to ensure that there is follow-up on taking actions and there is support for people at the grassroots from their managers on making these process and operational changes which bring about better customer experiences, right? So if you can do just these two things, I can tell you that the chances of your CX program in your organization succeeding is very high.
Thank you for that. That's really, really important. Every company have their culture statement, but it makes a big difference between having a statement and acting upon it. And Harish mentioned, very important is commitment, and then activating management support as well. Be interesting to hear from other panel members. How is culture a role and factor in CX and what you do? Who would like to volunteer? Truc, you want to say share your insights on the central culture?
Actually, it's not taken up from central culture, but the example I want to share is from my previous company, Agoda, one of the price-like company culture. So as the world evolved in a very fast pace, so we want to set up the culture of experimenting. So we want to experiment everything because we can't make decisions without being informed. And we want to experiment to test, whether it's the A/B testing, whether it's the pre and post testing, but by that it created a lot of confusion for the customer service agents, because one day they would receive this customer with the same situation handling in a different SOP, and another day the CRM tell them to handle a different SOP with the same exact situation or problem from the customer. So creating the culture is very important. We needed to explain to the customer service agent that why we need to testing. It's not to create a challenge or difficulty for the employees themselves or to the customer themselves, but to see what is the best way in order to leverage the technology for their efficiency and also to meet the customer experience as well. So those are the things that it took us a lot of time for the bottom up and for the top downs as well to make sure that people understand and it become the culture is in their blood that, okay, we want to test everything, we want to have the result in order to make the best out of it.
Cool. So A/B testing could be a part of a culture where a company always try to experiment with many different things and find the best practice. And it's always important to have top down, bottom up as well, the whole company understanding the vision, understanding the culture, and then acting upon it. Martin, you have any insights or anything to share on culture and CX?
No, I would totally support what the guys are saying. Like it's I know from when I joined Tree, for example, it was as a SEO specifically was something people just thought I was mispronouncing CEO and thought I was very senior. But that wasn't the case, unfortunately. So no, like when I came in, people didn't really understand what it was, and I realized that there was two kind of things I needed to do. I needed to get buy-in from my colleagues, but I also needed to get buy-in from directors and heads of function. So it was through a range of things. So, and like that, it was creating a culture of search. And it wasn't just me going in and telling people why it's really important that we focus on search engine optimization. It was making it relate to people. It was helping people understand how search could help them do their day job. And yeah, it was true. It was very practical things. It was doing lunch and learns. It was me presenting the latest news in SEO to people. It was going into directors and showing them what our performance was since I joined, and kind of helping them understand why we're actually investing in this area. And then since then it has grown, it's gotten more focused, and it's something that people come to me to talk about as a starting point. But we don't just focus on it as an acquisition channel anymore. We're also using it more and more for insights. Like what people search for is such a fantastic thing to tap into. If you can tap into that information and that kind of moment of need of a customer, you can really, really understand them. And it's a free data set that you can really enjoy kind of going around and learning from.
Yes, very important. What you touch upon is really the culture change aspect. How do you change your culture to be more aware of search, the lunch and learn, and then spreading the news? And it's very interesting because SEO has been around for a while, but many companies that I talk to and many friends, it's really behind the the back of their minds, which makes which they're not really leveraging. It's could be a very useful tool to drive traffic and also getting insights like Martin has mentioned. Millie, what's your take on culture and CX?
It is the most important ingredient. I really think that in order to satisfy the needs and delight my most important clients, who are my colleagues, the employees of the company, we really need to intertwine culture and CX. And so one of the things that we've started to do and started to experiment, this was pre-COVID, so we're still trying to make adjustments and continue to learn along the way, very agile, is to have all of our executives, regardless of the region, regardless of the country, to do mystery shopping once per month, every single month. And it's in these three different ways. One is to go and mystery shop in a branch. So I have dressed down like a teenager with no makeup on and gone to a branch to really understand and literally feel the pain. Believe me, feel the pain in a branch. It was very eye-opening. And then also to be an intern for a day, be a teller's intern or a financial intern. Yes, can you imagine one of the CEOs or one of the executives who wears a $20,000 watch dressing down to be an intern for the day? And then the other piece is around sitting in one of our call centers, or at least if you can't physically sit in, that's fine, then listen in on a full day of customers calling in to complain and take notes, not speaking to the customer and not trying to resolve the complaints, but just listening to this. So for me, I'm constantly saying, I want you to be empathetic. And everyone says, yes, I am already empathetic. But no one really understands what I mean by that. And what I really mean is I want you to feel the pain that our customers go through, because then you can really understand why is customer experience so important.
Can I just add what Millie has said, Andy? Because it's very interesting. She spoke about execs listening to customer calls. In my previous role, where I used to head customer experience for a FSI, actually we were colleagues, right, Andy, in Prudential. So we were trying to get something through with our senior management, and one of the things that we did was play back some customer calls which were on a particular topic. And when they listened to those customer complaints and customer calls, right, it was such an easy task to get that project off the ground and get support from them. I'm not kidding. So I totally can empathize with what Millie is trying to get done, right? It really opens your eyes, and it sort of puts you in the shoes of the customer and makes you feel that there is something wrong which you need to be fixed. In fact, there was a Bain study that I remember now, where they went to I think 400-500 global organizations, and they asked the CEOs of those companies, how well do you think you deliver on customer experience? And 80% of them said that we meet our customer expectations. And they went to the customers of those same organizations. Only 20% of them said that they meet customer expectations. There's a big gap in what executives think they're delivering versus what customers actually think they're getting from the company.
I have one thing to add to that. So one idea that I was going to implement, but I was told, I think you really need to think twice about it. So in the office, there's always a common space where you can eat your lunch, grab snack around the pantry. So what I wanted to do was install speakers there and stream, taking out PII, taking out any personal information, and stream the complaints. Because if you hear the same complaints over and over again, it might drive you crazy enough to just go and fix it. And the feedback that I got was, don't do this because you will scare all of our colleagues away. They won't want to sit there. They won't want to congregate. They won't want to come to the office to listen to these complaints.
No one's going to go to the water cooler anymore. So, this is one of them. That reminds me of this TV show, what Undercover Boss. I don't know if you saw that. So this is exactly what you're doing, and I agree. This is wonderful. I mean, there's no better way to build that empathy unless you're there face to face with customers. When you ask anybody, say, oh yeah, of course we're doing things that's customer centric. Oh yes, I understand our customers very, very clearly. But then once you're really on the ground at the spot with the customers, it makes a big difference. And on the flip side, you could always, you could also hear the good things as well, things that customers like, compliments and so forth. So it works both ways. Oh, wonderful. That's a very good insight, Millie. Thanks for sharing that. Loads of fun. Let me see. Maybe moving on to another question is, how can we improve the delivery of services and connect with customers in moment of need? So that is a question I think Martin is close to your heart on. Martin, you want to start with that one?
Yeah, sure. So I think this one's really close to me because it's the moment of need is something I've been talking about for as long as I've worked in online. Like it's a search engine is nothing like people say called search engine. It's an answers engine. You only go to a search engine when you have a question. So like every single time there's a search, there's a moment of need, and that's my entire job is to make sure that that moment of need is addressed. So I think that there's two things to focus on. There's one thing is like I think in digital there's always terms that we use on a daily basis and we actually kind of forget what they mean, and one of them is conversion. So we all talk about conversion rate, and I think the big mistake a lot of businesses make is that they think it's just about that moment somebody hits the thank you page. But there's loads of conversions. There's the first time somebody discovers you, they've converted from not knowing about you to knowing about you. And what we've built out a funnel of basically the stages of awareness and the whole customer journey, and that there's actually each stage of this is a conversion. So there's when the customer becomes aware of you, when they're considering you, when they evaluate you, they decide if you're the right solution or not, and eventually then you make a sale. So these are all the kind of key conversions. And what Millie spoke about earlier on kind of reminded me, it really kind of reminded me of how we look at another thing as well, which is intent. So not every search is created equal. Like when somebody types something into Google, they could be at the very start of their journey, the middle of their journey, they could be just about to buy, they might not want to buy at all. And what we want to try and do is understand that. So what we do is we actually kind of try and tap into that a little bit more. And like I said earlier, like search is a free bank of data for you to learn from. So what we've actually done is we've taken 3 primary layers of intent and overlaid that onto the conversion stages of our funnel. So there's informational, commercial, and transactional. So the beauty of this is that we can kind of not only understand what the customer is searching for, and understand what the intent behind that search is, but then also see what stage of the journey they're at that would map to that intent. So the great thing is we can make sure that we're serving them the right content to suit that stage. If they're upper funnel looking for awareness, we need to be like nice broad topics. That's why we created a blog over Christmas to aim for much higher kind of higher funnel questions. Then for commercial, they might be looking for things like comparisons between different devices. And then transactional, or even the decide stage, they're probably at the transactional stage, making sure we have comparison engines, making sure that we have the final stages of the conversion funnel optimized in terms of, yes, don't bail out now. This is the last USPs of why you should shop with us. So I think the really important thing for me is that this is a free data set that we have that with a little bit of work you can tap into. Every company can get this stuff, and all you have to do is look at what your conversions are the whole way through and make sure you're mapping to make sure that there's the right pages there to address all various different intent to keep on encouraging the customer to come down your funnel. So yeah, that's the long answer. The short answer is your company probably has loads of data you're not really using properly.
Thank you, Martin, for that. Definitely, that would add another dimension. It's not just the conversion, the final stage, but also the stage that they're at. That information will help you with your personalized message to that customer to nudge them towards the next stage or next step in the conversion process. So that's very interesting. Anyone have anything to add? If not, I'll move on to another question. Okay, if not, okay, let me just check here. I've got a few questions from the audience. Okay, how about this one? This is a more broad question. It's, digital transformation requires huge investment in technology. How do you convince management to invest in such cost-cautious pandemic situation? So with the current pandemic, always budget and cost is very important. How do you convince management to invest in technology? Any taker on that? Sure, you are expert in getting. Millie, you want to start? Yes, please.
So what I've been making a lot of speeches internally and writing articles about this.
Millie, you are on mute, I think.
Oh, no, we, yeah, okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
So actually, I've been speaking a lot about this, both at the senior level as well as across the organization. And Harvard Business Review and Forbes, they both did a study. Harvard Business Review's study extended over the past more than 100 years to look at each of these macro environmental points in history, such as world wars, pandemics, financial crises, etc. And what they found is that companies who pulled back on their spending and started to cut their spending and not invest in innovation, experimentation, new technologies, etc., they fared a very different path than those who took the time during a down economy, or such as now, to invest heavily in the new and the next phase after this all blows over. What they found is that those companies who invested fared really well, survived the pandemic or survived that economic blow, and ended up even in a higher position than their competitors, lasted much longer, much stronger strength, much stronger brand. Now, those companies who decided to make cuts ended up not exactly existing anymore. So if you've heard of companies like Kodak or Blockbuster or maybe even Polaroid, that might give you a hint. Whereas companies like IBM, who moved from creating mainframes and building mainframes, to IBM Watson, one of the leaders and the pioneers in AI technology. That's just something to keep in mind.
Great way to convince management. You want to still be around in 10 years or not? Harish, you have something to add as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the best time to go and ask for investment from your management when it comes to digital transformation. Like Martin said, there will be more yeses than nos, because you can see the change, right? I was talking to a friend of mine in an IT organization, and he told me that before the pandemic, they had no work from home policy at all. Either you are in office or you are on leave. Post pandemic, they've completely moved to work from home, and they've set up the entire infrastructure for an employee to work from home, which is a big undertaking, right? So there is a lot of willingness. There's a lot of need, because the customer expectation today is so far different from what it used to be, right? And to meet that, there is of course a human touch required, but digital is the way to go in terms of enabling your organization in meeting those customer expectations. So you have to invest in technology, and if you can show business impact from that investment, there is no reason why management would say no, right? So that would be my perspective.
Thank you.
I would like to step into to share my personal experience. On the very flip side, of course, all the management in the digitalized company would think that, there's more yes than ever to invest in technologies and stuff. But for my case, this is kind of different, because Truc is a very established long time for brick and mortar, and they just recently stepped in e-commerce. So lots of things to spend, a lot of things to improve and to build. Especially after the pandemic, it's heavily impacted on the sales and revenues, because the department store was forced to close, and then there was no income for the past few months. So they try to cut down as many costs that they can, and there's no reason for them to invest in a small segment of e-commerce where in the very infancy stage. So what it is was, it's not that it's not impossible, but it's not easy at the moment as well. So we need to, and then customer experience is not something easy to measure in terms of ROI. You can't just come and say that, okay, I changed this one by technology, I will get the revenue by 20%, 30%, sale will increase. Super easy, but customer experience is something intangible, and it may return in the long terms as well, right? So one key thing that I recommend is to try to build the measurable metrics as much as you can by, if you are working in a call center related to the saving in the minutes or the efficiency of the agent serving the customer by productivity, or building an IVR to help the customer can self-serve themselves instead of reaching to an agent where you can save some cost in the headcount. If you are working on the marketing, try to benchmark yourself with the industry and seeing how the others are doing, what technology that they're using, and set a very determined and measurable long-term goal to show that how you want to reach to, instead of just convincing them, okay, because this is the digitalized era, so I just want to spend money on technology. Some get it, some just very new to it.
Yes, it's really tough time. So it's a really tough decision sometimes, how much to spend and where to spend it on. I think we're quickly running out of time. So before we end, there's one question that I really like to get your input on, is that human touch question that we talked about. With everything digital, we lose the human touch in terms of how do we interact with a company, and how do we engage consumers. We don't have that person-to-person there to understand their needs. And so how do you cope with that? How do you add that human touch back to the customer interaction? And some people say AI is the answer. I don't know. I want to get your perspective on that. Harish, you have unmuted yourself. You ready to share?
No, that was not for this, but happy to share. I think the human touch is not going to go away, but the impact of it might shift and might change a little bit. It's as we pivot towards having more digital journeys and interactions and touch points within our lives and within our interactions with the brands that we work with and do business with. The human touch can come from the empathy that the brand shows in terms of the way they solve the customer problem, the way they empathize and make it easier for the customers to do, to interact with them, to do business with them, to transact with them. I think that, the more and more you focus on that human-centered design and human-centered journeys and put customers in the center of it, to me, that is still a human touch, right? So it doesn't have to be a physical interaction with someone.
It's a very good point. First step to providing human touch is understanding customer, and empathy is very important. And Millie, you touched upon empathy in your talk. How do you address a human touch?
It depends, because some customers, even though we want to be there face to face, they don't want us. They're still too afraid, and I don't blame them. So for the customers who do want us, then definitely having virtual chats or some type of interaction, then that definitely is on the table. But for those customers who they have every right to be cautious, then we're very respectful of that as well. But in general, in the long term, what we've started to do is to design from a human-centered design thinking methodology, so that we put the customer in the center, we design around them, so that there's always a human touch, whether it's virtual or not.
It's a good point. I think human touch doesn't have to be digital, doesn't have to be AI, it could be a virtual interaction as well. It's a very good point. Martin, you unmuted yourself. You have something to add?
Yeah, I think it's kind of along that thought of kind of challenging what a human touch point is. Like, I don't even think human touch points really need to be two-way. Like, you think about the last 12 months, a lot of us have had a lot of time at home, a lot of time not seeing people. Like, I'm fortunate enough to live with my girlfriend, but there's probably some people who do live alone who haven't actually seen other people. And we need to kind of appreciate how difficult it's been for some people like that. So like a human touch point for a brand right now could be a video. It could be something very simple where people can just interact. Like, I know Truc UK launched, so we've two businesses, Truc Ireland and Truc UK, but we're currently working on a video streaming platform where we do live broadcasts. And Truc UK has already done this. And my first impression when I saw it was there's 20 or 30 people watching every broadcast. And in my head, I started challenging that metric with YouTube numbers, being like, well, what's the point in doing this? But then I actually went on a broadcast myself, like not on the broadcast, I actually sat down to watch one. And I found it really engaging because when I typed a question, there was only 20 or 30 other people, and the broadcaster could actually see my question and answer it on the broadcast. And I found myself being really drawn into what we were talking about. So I think stuff like that as well, like that was a two-way example, but it doesn't have to necessarily be that. But it's just a really interesting way to think about kind of challenging what is a customer or human touch point and how we can kind of make the most of these kind of new ways of communicating with customers.
Yeah, very interesting point. Well, I mean, look at the popularity of Clubhouse. I mean, being able to listen to different people talking about different things and be a part of a group is something that we share so much now since we're so isolated. Truc, what's your secret in adding some human touch to your interaction?
Yeah, I feel really relate to the other panelists as well on leverage the technology to act on the human touch. So it doesn't need to be human to human contact, right? But then we can leverage, for example, AI or IVR to when the customer contact us, we know right away what is their problem by the chatbot or by the IVR learning. And also the customer representative can use the CRM to pick up where the last conversation and then tailor the unique solution to the customer. It's not like, okay, I know your problem, but this is only what I can do. Even the human is robotic, right? So human touch doesn't mean that a person speak to a person, but how you can design the journey and how you can train a person to design the interaction that unique to the customer.
Thank you so much. So true. Even sometimes humans could be too robotic if we follow some scripts. I believe our time's up. I'd like to thank our panel members for their precious insights and time. I really definitely learned a lot myself. Let me hand it back to Bhavana.
Absolutely. So Andy, the panel is doing so well that the Trescon team has graced us with an extra few minutes. If it's okay with our panel, our eminent panel, there's just one question which we'd like to ask from the audience. Is that okay? Just one more question?
Yeah. Sure, I think that should be okay.
Okay, so just one question, which I'm pasting right here for all our eminent panelists, just your view on that is, once my product or service is launched, do I need to continue getting customer feedback? Now, I know it's a very basic question, but that's coming in from one of our audience members, and they asked that how often should I be testing it? So would any of you like to intervene on that and share your suggestion? Harish, smiling, you need to answer that now. Over to you.
Yeah, I put myself in the spot, right? The short answer to that question is absolutely yes, right? I've seen organizations use customer feedback to design great experiences, great products. In fact, before I joined Qualtrics, I was a user of Qualtrics, and I used the platform to design some of the most successful products that we launched. So while it helps to get customer feedback and design product and experiences, it's so important that once you have launched it, you go back to them and ask them about what can you do better, because we don't operate in a static environment, right? Technology is changing so fast, customer expectations are changing so fast, your competition is changing so fast. That products keep getting copied, product features keep getting copied, and ultimately it's all about the experience that you're delivering. So whether your product is meeting the current customer expectations or not, what are their future expectations? Millie talked about anticipating or proactively preempting what customers may want, right? So how does that product evolve? How does that service evolve? It's so important that you get feedback from customers after you've launched something to improve it and to continue making sure that it continues to stay ahead of the game.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Harish, for that. Andy, I'd just like to give you the final word because you've moderated so wonderfully. The final word from you around the entire panel. We've got a minute to wrap up. Over to you, Andy.
Okay. We got 1 minute to wrap up. Maybe what we could do is get each of our panel members to say 1 or 2 words of advice to our audience on CX success. What is your secret? 2 words, 1 or 2 words, most important. Very tough.
Am I going to put Martin on the spot? Martin first.
If it's 2 words, just listen.
Very good, very good, very good. I like that.
Millie?
Customer advocacy. It's your job to be the customer's advocate internally.
True.
Perfect. Harish?
Listen and act.
Listen and act. Truc, your 2 words?
Since only 1 or 2 words, so I will add understand so that we can make it better.
Sure. So thank you so much, Andy, for moderating it so wonderfully. And thank you for being with us today to our eminent panel on behalf of TressCon Global. We thank you for your time today. Thank you.